Welcome back to more Money Minutes for Doctors. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that should be very near and dear to every doctor's heart, doctors and contracts. How would you like to know about the gotchas that could be in your contract? So today is part one of a two-part episode we're going to be doing where we break down doctors' contracts so you can look for those gotchas and make sure they don't get you in the end. And by the way, we want you to do that before you sign the contract. My name is Catherine Vesnas. I'm the CEO and founder of MD Financial Advisors, and I'm also an attorney. So we have looked at hundreds of doctors' contracts, and today we're going to bring all that information, get it all nice and synthesized for you, down to a few takeaways that you can put into practice for yourself. So if you have any other questions you'd like us to address in the future, please reach out to us at info@mdfinancialadvisors.com. Now, I'm sure you've looked at your employment contract. You've probably been taken aback with all the legal jargon, the many, many pages of information and wondering, oh my gosh, this is just way, way, way too hard to understand. And here's what I find a lot of doctors doing, particularly young doctors. You're exhausted. You've been through medical school. You've been through residency, a lot of times fellowship. You have been staying up all night. You don't even know what a good night's sleep is like. You are so fatigued and so burnt out. The first contract that comes your way, you just want to sign and be done with the pain. I'm going to ask you to wait. Take a deep breath and let's make sure this is a good deal for you. Because many times I've seen doctors sign contracts that were not in their best interest. So one of the things that we do for all of our financial planning clients is actually not only review the terms of their contracts and kind of go through what could be the gotchas, the red flags, the landmines, but we also want to talk them through something they don't teach you in medical school, which is how to negotiate the agreement and how to get a better deal. So we'll be talking about some of that today. Today it's going to be primarily about base pay, bonuses, restrictions, and just some general tips. And then our next episode, we're going to be talking more about employee benefits. All right, so let's go on to base pay. This is where every doctor starts thinking how important this is. And a lot of times, unfortunately, the thinking stops with base pay. It should not. I've actually seen contracts where the base pay was lower than another contract, but another contract might be better because the fringe benefits were so much better. One thing to keep in mind about base pay is when it's your first job, that base pay sets the bar for the rest of your career. So we want to get the base pay in your first job as absolutely as high as possible. It's going to make it easier to negotiate higher pays as you shift jobs, or even if you stay with your same employer going forward. So keep that in mind. We want to get the bar as high as possible with the first job. I did have a very beloved client, absolutely adorable. His first job, and this was many, many years ago, he took primary care at $165,000 a year, which in my mind was quite low. And he goes, but I love these people. I love them so much. I love my colleagues. I love what we're doing. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I go, that's terrific. I'm really glad you've got a place that you've got a passion for and you feel great about. But you've got student debt up to your eyeballs and you've got 2 kids. And I think it's fine to realize that we're making some trade-offs here, but make sure you understand the trade-offs up front. If you're taking a lower salary because you like the people, you like the environment, you like the patients, you love what you're doing, that's terrific. But in his case, he had to recognize that probably meant it was going to be a number of years before he's going to be able to buy a house. And he was not going to be able to send his kids to private school. And maybe that's fine, but there's just trade-offs. So just be aware of these trade-offs. Now, next thing to think about with base salary is how is it calculated? Sometimes it's very simple. We're going to give you X, $300,000, $400,000 for this year. But sometimes it's more complicated. Sometimes it can relate to how many RVUs you have and what is the going rate for the RVUs. Sometimes it's based on collections. It can be based on a number of different factors. So once again, you want to make sure that you know how is it calculated. Sometimes this can be very misleading. So as you're going through the interviewing process, I would check with other doctors who are about your age, about your years in practice. And if they're already employees there, ask them, how much have you been making? What did you make when you started? What are you making now? They may not tell you, but most most doctors are so generous with this information. You shouldn't hesitate to ask for it. And the person that's recruiting you, ask what a doctor in your position is making in 2, 5, and 10 years. Very important information for you to have. Now, sometimes raises are actually written into the contract. Sometimes not. This can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing, depending upon the situation. Once again, know what are the raises based on, and can they be decreased? I have seen more contracts recently that, although it's written very carefully, it could have your pay decreased if certain objectives aren't met, or if perhaps the institution, hospital, clinic that you're working for, if they're not as financially sound. Now, that's a big shock. Years ago, we would never ever see that, but it's possible now. You could be looking at a situation where a future employer might want to actually reduce your salary. Not a good thing, but good to know about up front. Now, whether you have one contract or 5, we should not just compare your salary contract to contract, but we like to compare it to other doctors in your specialty and in your location. And this varies tremendously. So I recently purchased some very, very high-end, I'm going to call it the Cadillac of data in this particular topic, from the Medical Group Management Association, MGMA. I don't know if you've ever heard about it, but they do a lot of benchmark data on doctors' salary. First of all, the software was crazy expensive. So if you're one of our beloved clients listening to this, please reach out, because I want to make sure that we can plug in your information to this tool that we have now, and you can see how you rank against your peers in your geographical area. It also can tell you how you rank against your peers who've been in practice as long as you have, different subspecialties, etc. Now, this data is crucial when you're thinking about negotiating your next contract, whether you're moving positions or whether you're starting out with your first job as an attending. Let me tell you about a case I had many years ago. A primary care doctor, he's moving to Atlanta. They gave him a contract. I looked at this, I kind of evaluated the salary. I go, well, here's the thing. This salary, not only is it fixed for 6 years, which is very unusual in the industry, but it is also $25,000 to $50,000 less per year than other doctors in your specialty in this area. I think he was completely shocked about this. So I said, I think you need to go back, renegotiate this. Let's show them the data. Sure enough, he did. He got rid of the 6-year fixed limit. He also got the salary up. I think it was another $25,000 per year. And I figured, you know what, over 5 years, he probably made an additional $250,000 just from that one part of his contract. So very, very important to see how you rank against your peers in salary. Now, this data also lets us compare retirement plan benefits too. So keep that in mind. Next thing that could be in your contract is bonuses. I want to run through, there's numerous different types. I want to explain what they each are and what you need to look at. If you don't see bonuses clearly articulated in this contract, obviously you want to talk about that as part of the negotiations, especially if you've been negotiating a salary increase and your future employer says, no, it's carved in granite, it's take it or leave it. So sometimes you can't get the salary up, but you can get other things as part of the negotiation process. And certain bonuses are some of the things that you could ask for. So let me run through these. One is a signing bonus. Now, in my mind, technically, a signing bonus means you sign the contract in May, you're going to start in July. You should be getting that check the day that you signed, right? That is a signing bonus in legal parlance. What I'm finding, though, is a lot of doctors' contracts will say they get a signing bonus, but they don't actually get it till they're 90 days in the job or something else. That is a retention bonus. Let's be honest, it is not a signing bonus. Nothing wrong with retention bonuses, but let's call it what it really is. That retention bonus can mean something like, if you're with us after a year, we're going to give you an extra $10,000, $15,000, $30,000, $50,000. But if you leave beforehand, then you're going to forfeit that money. Or sometimes I can see forfeiture clauses on the signing bonus. It assumes that you stay there a year or 2 years. If you depart early, then there's going to be a clawback provision on the signing bonus. Now, these vary a lot for specialties. If you are higher earning, a specialty, maybe radiology, orthopedic surgeons or whatever, these bonuses can be quite large, $50,000, $75,000, maybe even more. On the other hand, if you're primary care, we might be lucky to get 5, 10, or 15,000. So it's going to vary a lot. Once again, are you in academics? Are you strictly clinical? A lot of different factors go into play. So look whether it's a signing bonus or a retention bonus, or it could be both. That would be lovely. The next could be relocation expenses or moving expenses. So up until a few years ago, this was a fantastic bonus because it was not taxable. Yes. However, recent tax laws changed it, and this is treated like any other bonus. So for sure, make sure that you get relocation expenses. The proper thing to do with this is to have them gross it up to cover your taxes on this amount, right? Because you're going to have expenses on this. We want to make sure that that's more fair to you. So ask them to gross it up to cover future taxes on that bonuses. Now, sometimes there can be other bonuses. They have in some contracts what I think of as the good citizen bonus. This is, did you attend enough meetings? Did you do outreach to the community? Did you hold special events and talk about whatever your area specialty is or whatever? You get good patient reviews. If they have these other bonuses, dive in and ask more questions. What are they really based on? How does it work? What's a typical bonus for most doctors here? What would be likely for me to expect? And then find out, are they annual, semi-annual, quarterly? Sometimes they're based on productivity. Just get more information and decide if you can live with what the conditions are. All right, next thing to look for are certain restrictions. Now, a very common one is whether you can work outside this job or whether you can moonlight. So if you are one of our doctors at Kaiser, then you know the cold hard truth. Kaiser will not let you practice medicine anywhere in the country, even if it doesn't conflict with them. They find that they hold that against their contract. So you want to be very, very careful. There is no moonlighting with Kaiser. And to be fair, the reason a lot of employers put that kind of clause in their contract is they don't want you to be working at some other clinic and have that patient sue you, run through money there, and then sue your main employer for damages. It could be very expensive to them. So I get that. I understand the thoughts behind it. But nowadays, most doctors are moonlighting. Yes. You have a wonderful chance to augment your income with side gigs and extra income. And I would certainly encourage you to do this. Could be all sorts of different things that you're doing in your moonlighting. Common thing is expert witness testifying. If you're currently doing that when you're negotiating this, find out up front what their policies are on your side gig and your outside work. And very often they will allow it if it's approved in advance. So make sure you disclose it and you get it approved in advance. You don't want to continue your side gig, not have disclosed it, and then have them void the entire contract because you hadn't told them an important fact. So once again, get that checked out up front. Now, another thing to look for is breach of contract clauses. And in the legal industry, we call this a liquidated damages clause. So let me explain what that is from a legal perspective, and then I'll talk about how this can impact doctors. So when we're negotiating a contract, we can say, look, if either one of us breaches this contract, it's going to cause harm, financial harm to the other party. We have no idea what that financial harm is today. We don't even know what the breach is. But if you do breach it, we're going to agree up front that you're going to owe us X amount of dollars. Once again, it's called a liquidated damages clause. Very rarely is this ever stated as a liquidated damages clause in a doctor's contract, right? You would just do a Google search, see if it had that nomenclature in there. And if it did, you'd be going, wait a minute, we don't want this kind of clause. So they've disguised it. They've talked about it in the contract without it actually being labeled liquidated damages. So another case, lovely, fabulous doctor. She's moving from someplace in Boston down to North Carolina. And she had me review her contract. I looked at this over as a very small clinic that she was going into. And she was going to be one of maybe only 2 doctors, the owner and her. I read through this contract and basically said, this is so horrible. You should never sign this. And let me explain to you about this liquidated damages clauses. Because this contract is written so much in the favor of the owner, I can guarantee you, you're going to do something unwittingly and violate the terms of the contract. You won't mean to, but it's that binding. It's that controlling. And when you do, the liquidated damages clause says you're basically going to owe him 3 years of salary. 3 years of salary. Please do not sign this contract. I said, just to be sure, let's refer to somebody in my law firm, have them look it over and see if they agree with me. Sure enough, they said the same thing. Fortunately, she didn't take that job. She took another one, and she's been very happy. So be very careful with this clause, because as I said, it's likely not to be labeled for what it really is. Now, almost all contracts nowadays for doctors include an arbitration clause. A lot of our clients don't know what that is, so give me a minute here to review law school. 3 ways that you can really resolve most disputes. One is you can go to trial. You're very familiar about that. Pros and cons with all of this: it can be an expensive, time-consuming endeavor. But on the positive side, if you get a decision that you don't like, you can always appeal that up, right? And maybe get that reversed, which can be very, very helpful. The other end of the spectrum is something called mediation. This is just sitting down and kind of reviewing things back and forth. Usually you'd have some attorneys in there doing the mediating and come up with some sort of solution that's worked out with both of you, and you contractually agree to resolve your differences like that. I much prefer mediation. 85% of the time, it solves the problems. It's a lot less emotionally draining and a lot less financially draining. Now, in the middle is something called arbitration. Arbitration works a little bit like a lawsuit in that you might have 1 or 3 arbitrators, and they hear the evidence in similar ways to court. It's supposed to be slimmed down without all the legal rules, parameters, etc., that you would have in a court case. Some people think it's faster and cheaper. I'm not so sure I agree, but here's the big problem with arbitration. It is not appealable. Yes, if you get a bad decision, there is no place to go. And unfortunately, I've seen this happen very recently with a doctor. I'm going to change some of the facts here. Doctor in Michigan, another orthopedic surgeon. For whatever reason, he got crosswise with the members of his group. He was a partner at the time, and they wanted to kick him out of the partnership. Not only that, they didn't want to pay him all his share of the partnership, a whole bunch of other money that he was entitled to. It was not pretty. They had an arbitration clause. They happened to get an arbitrator that really didn't understand doctors' contracts, didn't understand how things go, and they voted against my client and in favor of the partnership. So it can cost many, many hundreds of thousands of dollars, which unfortunately it did in this situation. And he has no appeal. He has no way to go. Just because the arbitrator did not properly apply the law in that case, there's nothing you can say or do. So be careful about arbitration. What I usually recommend for my clients is they write in a clause that says before we arbitrate, before we go to court, if we have any disagreements, we both agree to try to settle our differences with mediation first. I suggested this to a client, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago. I just put it in routinely thinking it's probably never going to come up. Sure enough, 2 years later, she's unhappy with her boss. And she was very thankful she had that mediation clause because there was no arbitration, no lawsuit. They were able to resolve things a lot less painfully. So consider mediation clauses there. And by the way, I think it's good for your employer too. Their attorneys may not be up to speed on this, but they should be. All right, some general tips here. First of all, get your entire contract in writing. That's usually going to be stated someplace on the contract. This is the entire contract. Now, this is important for you because it means that if they've sent you an email and said, oh, yes, you can do this outside side gig, or we're going to pay for your moving expenses, or whatever it is. No, you only have to do clinic 4 days a week. You can take the 5th to do admin work. Whatever it is, ask them to put it in writing in the contract. And if they verbally tell you, oh, no, we always give bonuses every year, or whatever it is, have them put it in the contract. And that's because at the end of the day, only those things that are in that contract in writing that you've both signed off matter. Nothing else matters. Nothing that they promised you, if it's not in the contract, there's no way that you can enforce it. So get it in writing. Now, when it comes to negotiations, and if this is helpful, let me know, and I could do another whole podcast on negotiations. The very most power you are ever going to have in this relationship is before you sign a contract. I have had a couple of doctors sign the contract and then send it to me to review. I go, that's terrific. I'm happy to tell you what you signed, but there's not a darn thing we can do about it. So please reach out to us before you sign the contract, right? That's where you've got the most power, where we can make the most changes, and you really know what you're doing. Now, by the way, it can be helpful for us to look at them afterwards. Very often we'll have clients who want to do a side gig, or maybe they want to switch to a different employer. We need to look at that contract to make sure what the rules are that allow you to do that and what the consequences would be. So keep copies. Let us know if we can help. Now, negotiations, please do these in person, or at the very least over a Zoom call. Never, ever do these by email or text messages. That is a complete disaster. You're going to need the opportunity to assess body languages, kind of get their feedback, make sure there aren't any misunderstandings. So best if you can do it in person, if not Zoom. Next, whatever they offer you, never, ever agree on the spot. First of all, the first offer on the box, out of the box, usually leaves something on the table. There's usually some money, some benefits, something on the table. So you never want to take the first offer. Here's what you do want to do, though. You do want to say this, I think the fit is great here, and then list all the things you like about the place. You like how you practice medicine. You've really enjoyed their whole process. You love their ethics, whatever it is you can honestly say about them. But tell them that you need time to do some research, review it, and talk with your advisors. And don't respond in pressure on the moment. That's when bad decisions are made. And remember, don't necessarily take the firm offer, and don't answer on the spot. Now, at your next meeting, after they had the initial offer, you want to go in with a list of questions and priorities and see if you can't improve on certain things in the agreement to sweeten the deal. And as I mentioned before, sometimes they won't give on salaries, but maybe you can get an extra week or two of vacation, or maybe you can get some sign-on bonuses, or there's some other things that might help you feel really comfortable about taking this offer. All right. Yes, I know for most doctors, contracts are confusing. It's why you went to medical school instead of law school. But once again, if you have a contract, whether you've signed it already or you're just considering it, you want us to look at it, please reach out. That's why we're here. We're very happy to review it for you. And we want all doctors to feel confident and secure in knowing that they've made their best choice and that they're in a really, really good place with their contracts. Now, please don't miss our next episode, because we're going to be talking about benefits and some of the ones that we commonly see in contracts. And once again, where the landmines are so you can avoid them. So in closing, I hope you found this helpful. And if you did, please pass it on to your colleagues. That would mean a lot to us. Also, if you can follow us or like us on social media, that helps raise us in the ranks, so that more doctors can get this really vital information. Finally, if you want a second opinion on your financial health, you can always do that by emailing us at info@mdfinancialadvisors.com. Once again, Catherine Vestnes signing off. Remember, take care of yourself. Plan, protect, and prosper.